Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Stronger Than Cancer, the podcast. Today, I've got a wonderful guest, someone that I connected with through a social group on Facebook, which is the movement Wellness After Diagnosis. And, you'll see on her profile, top contributor. She offers wonderful insights. She is a wonderful support person. And I'm really excited to have Nina on today. Nina, welcome. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm good. I'm really good. All the better for speaking with you this morning.
Yes, yes. I've been looking forward to this one, and I think more so because our diagnosis is very similar, right? So there's a lot of synergy, a lot of alignment between our journey, and you're a little bit ahead of me on the journey. So I think you've got some wonderful insights. So let me start by asking the question: what does being stronger than cancer mean to you?
I thought this was such a great question, and I did have to think about it a bit. But for me, it's about finding a way of really living through cancer, with cancer, living well with cancer. And for me, it's been a little bit about sort of using cancer to my advantage. So to create a life that's got meaning and purpose. And cancer has actually become a big part of that. So I've just decided it's with me and I'm going to play my cards the best I can.
I love that, and that's the one thing that right off the bat, when I was diagnosed, it was how do I live with this? How do I just have to carry this with me and business as usual. Let me dig into that a little bit. I want to ask, because you talked about obviously using it to create a life of, I guess, meaning and purpose. But what does that look like day to day? Actually, in practice, what does that look like for you? What are the things that you are doing to ensure that what you have now has got purpose and meaning?
Yeah, well, you know what? It hasn't happened overnight. So my diagnosis was in 2020. And at that stage, I was a busy parent. I was a shift worker. My background is in nursing and busy family life with my husband and 3 kids. And like most parents, you're just kind of going from one day to the next. But that all kind of creates your sense of purpose in life. And that, along with my nursing career, that was where my meaning, my identity, everything was. And in the first few months of doing treatment and surgery, that's okay. I had another purpose. I had albeit unexpected, but I threw myself into that. And I guess I hoped that that would be a fairly contained part of my life. As things evolved and I had to accept that this was going to be with me in the long term and with my family in the long term, I had to think about how I could repurpose my life. And after, that took a lot of acceptance that this was with me for the long term.
Mm.
But I think in
I
nursing,
didn't get that.
I
Could you
think,
try again?
oh, sorry.
That's all right. This
Thanks,
is what I love
Siri. I
about
don't
this
need your help
podcast.
on this
I
one.
know. I've got this answer. I know the answer to this, Siri. Thank you very much.
I've got this. Thanks, Siri. Thanks for your support. But
Yeah.
I think after that acceptance that this was my life, I kind of drew on a lot of experience that I'd had. I'd witnessed a lot of families in nursing who had to accept chronic illness, sometimes terminal diseases, life-limiting diseases, things that they had to adjust their life for and that the whole family unit had to adjust their life for. So I'd sort of seen it in practice. And I looked at that and thought, there is life after a diagnosis, whatever that looks like. And it's about trying to figure out how that is for you. And so it's taken me, and it's evolved. It's evolved bit by bit. But it had to come to a point where I had to accept, okay, my life as I knew it is finished, that part of my life. And I need to look at what I can do now. And to be quite honest, when I was originally stage 3. When I was told that it was stage 4, that was a turning point for me. That was
Mm.
a low point, but it was also a point where I had the opportunity to redefine things. And so I looked at, right, this is all consuming. I'm thinking about this all the time. I'm living with this all the time. What can I do to actually incorporate this into my sense of purpose in life? And that's where I turned towards the bowel cancer community and thought, okay,
Mm.
there's a lot of stuff here that I feel I have to give from my personal experiences, from my nursing experiences, just and I think just linking in also I was actually given a lot of support and mentorship from the bowel cancer community, and I felt like I had an opportunity to give back, and it's a dynamic thing. We all,
Mm.
as you've discovered, like it's a really dynamic thing, and when you feel
It
that
is,
you
yeah.
have something to offer, it's a nice feeling because you
It
think,
is.
okay, here's a person who's been in my shoes, you know, last month, 6 months ago, 5 years ago, whatever. I can tell them that there is hope. And that's what it is. It's not finding who's got the magic bullet. It's about finding out how other people have maybe navigated this space in terms of redefining their life. So for me, it's about giving back to the community, thinking about how I might be able to advocate so that other people don't go down this path, because we probably wouldn't choose it. Let's face it. We'll make
Correct.
lemonade out of our lemons, but we wouldn't probably choose it. And if we can stop someone else going through that same thing. So there's been a lot of
Yeah.
things through the community or through Bowel Cancer Australia that have given me a real sense of meaning and purpose. But to go back to your point is, what does a day look like for me? It is all the normal parenting things, plus my medical appointments, plus exercise, which I think we're probably going to chat about a bit later, but
Yeah.
that's a really key thing for me. A great all round, if there was a magic bullet, I'd almost say exercise was it. Um, and and then doing all sorts of bits and pieces, whether it be within our support group or other little projects and things that I've been privileged to be involved in. They really give me a sense of meaning and purpose. But it literally can go from sitting in an oncologist's office and being delivered some news that's difficult to hear, to the school sport run, to
Great.
groceries, to dinner,
It's
and
insane.
then back into the group. And that is the
Yeah.
life. That's the life.
That's the
The
life now.
the
That's
the
the journey,
joys
right?
and the struggles, they live side by side, and we've got to grab them all. Otherwise we're going to
Yeah.
miss out.
I love that, and I think that when you describe it like that, it can go from being all engrossed in the cancer journey that we're on to, for me, I can then go to the football field and I'm coaching the under
Yeah.
sixes football team that my son plays in, and I'm
Yeah.
forgetting about all of that. So I think there's a bit to unpack in that, and I think there's a couple of questions I want to pull out of it that I didn't know I was going to ask. And the first one is, you've got a husband and 3 children. How, what were the thoughts that you were going through when you were first diagnosed? I remember that they were just, my wife and my
Mm.
children were the only thing I could think about, and the things I might miss out on. How was that for you, and how did you deal with that? What was that process like for you when you first got diagnosed,
Yeah.
having to tell them and then have them sort of work out how they're going to navigate their journey?
Yeah. Yeah. Really mixed. Really mixed, because obviously we all process these things in different ways. In myself, felt fairly pragmatic, kind of thought, well, you know what, if someone in the family is going to have to deal with this, it might as well be me. I just felt like I could navigate, I guess, just having the clinical background. I'm not really sure, but I kind of felt like, all right, well, I've got this. But then, yeah, in the very next thought, it's, what about Aaron? What about the kids? We had actually had some experiences in our family, um, of seeing people live with cancer long term. And I think that was helpful, because for my family, and everyone has a different experience of this, but for my family, cancer didn't automatically mean a death sentence.
Mm.
In my family, we'd had some positive role models, and we'd seen how someone could live with cancer as a chronic disease. So I think when they were told, and obviously you give your kids information at their level, that's
Yeah.
that's right for that personality. Every kid is different, and every age has got those real nuanced differences. So we delivered just enough news that they felt like they were in the loop, and we
Yeah.
waited for questions. But I was probably most worried about my husband, I'll be honest,
Right. Okay.
because, yeah, I think I felt like he was so close to it all, but had no power, no control. Yeah, just that sense of a bit of helplessness, not really
Yeah.
sure what to
Yeah.
do. But over time, obviously, we've come to this different role. You know, everyone figures out how they cope with that. But you also all travel, you might travel side by side, but you are on your own path, even though
That's
you're
it.
in the same household. And so it is hard. You've got to step outside of yourself sometimes and think, how are they viewing this? And then it's changed. It's changed along the way. You know, my kids, that was 5 years ago. My kids have grown up a lot since then. They're now, you know, teenagers, young adults. They
Mm.
they've seen more of the world. They know the realities of things. And so I guess you just have to keep updating how you
Yeah.
communicate with them along the way.
And they're seeing the journey as well, right? So they're seeing it, which
Yes.
means that that those questions might drop off because they are, whilst it's a family journey, you're the one that's obviously driving, I guess, the bus on that journey because you're the one with the illness. But they get to see it, they get to live it. I think just
Mm.
for the listeners, the one thing that I'll pull out of that, and it is something that we talked about as a family. I've got many nieces and nephews. I obviously have 5 children myself, ranging from the age of 4 to 22. And I think the one thing that you said is that you may have to tailor how you approach it to the personality
Mhm.
as well as the age. And people don't often think about the personality. My daughter's 6, she's very emotional, and she's already experienced, a couple of deaths in the family of loved ones that she was very close with. So she
Mm.
she she often talks about that. So we had to tailor that, not just for her age at 6, but her personality. So if anyone's going through this, wondering what how to approach that, I think that's sound advice. I love that. It's not just the age, it's the personality as well, and that might mean you have different conversations at different times with all of your children, which is what I've done. Look, moving on a little, because you've had a lot of treatments. I was obviously going
Yeah.
through from 2020 through to 2024. You've obviously gone through it, and you've had a lot of different things. And obviously, as you said, during that journey, you were stage 3, then it became stage 4. So you've had to adapt. Can you walk us through that? So first of all, just walk us through the journey that you've been on, but also I wanted to ask about, how did you explore sort of more integrative therapies, I guess, going that
Mm.
traditional route versus that holistic route? Because I wanted to see, I think that's a big thing for a lot of listeners. They're wondering, do I go the traditional route? Do I go the holistic route? Do I
Mm.
go, and it's a real struggle because I've struggled with it. What was your journey like when you went through that?
Mm. The first thing I'd say is your experience is unique. You are unique and you are in the driver's seat. And that might feel really scary to start with, but over time, you will become the expert in yourself, in your own care, in your needs. So, and it's a learning curve. So it is overwhelming, but you will become the expert in your own health journey. For me, so it started off in 2020, I had a bowel resection, which went really well. And I was told, look, you need to follow up with 6 months of chemo. And I thought, right, I can do that. That sounds doable. And it was rough, it's not fun, is it? No
Mm,
matter what kind of chemo or treatments you're on, they're pretty rough, but it felt quite time limited, so it felt really achievable. Look, had you told me at the time that this was going to be my experience over several years, I don't know how I would have coped with that, but I think this has taught me that it really is about breaking it down. One phase of treatment at a time, 1 week
that's
at a
right.
time, 1 day at a time, one moment at a time. That's the only way you can do it. So I did that. I had a bowel resection, and I didn't come out with a stoma bag, or I came out with minimal side effects, good recovery, did my chemotherapy, and returned to work and thought, right, okay, life moves on. But of course, you do surveillance, and unfortunately, it wasn't very long before they picked up that there was spread. And that spread, they found, they went in thinking it was just in my ovaries, but my colorectal surgeon was pretty cluey, and he went in with the gynecological surgeon. He said, I'm just gonna scrub in on this one. And he had a little poke around and realized it had actually gone further. So at the end of 2021, I had the ovaries removed, but they quickly realized, okay, we need to be looking a bit further afield. And so 3 weeks later, I had a procedure called a peritonectomy with HIPEC. There's a lot of jargon that you end up learning
I
over
was
this
reading it and
time.
I couldn't even say it. I was
Yeah,
looking at the word on the page. I was like,
yeah.
I'm going to wait for Nina to say that one.
Oh, it's look, and between that and all the different medications they put you on, it's a whole other language. And even then, you only learn what's relevant to you. You can't know all the gamut of
Rich.
options that might be available out there. But this was basically an open abdominal surgery. So, you've got your big scar from sort of just under your rib cage down to your pubic bone. They open you up. They have a good look around. They take out any obvious tumor that they can see. And then whilst you're still under anesthetic, they put a heated chemotherapy inside your abdominal cavity, and that soaks for a couple of hours. I think it's around an hour and a half or something like that. They drain that off. They sew you back up, and then you watch and wait, and it does its thing. So the
Yeah.
idea is that can potentially get to cancerous bits and pieces in that abdominal space a bit more directly.
Yeah.
It is a big surgery, but again, it was tough, but I did recover relatively well, and I followed that up with another 6 months of chemo.
Yeah.
Not long after I'd finished that, we realized, that look, there had been more spread. And I went back in and had another similar surgery and another
Wow.
6 months of chemo. So it did continue on. It did give me, though, a really good stretch of quality time where I wasn't recovering from surgery and I wasn't on chemo.
Mm.
And now I understand that in this space, that can sometimes be a good outcome. That might be your good outcome, because there are people that don't even get those stretches of time. So I'm really appreciative of that, because that has meant quality time, whether it is just being a parent, trips, spending time with people, going out for dinners, whatever it is that, you enjoy. For me, it's, it could be as simple as walking the dog on the beach. But I've
Yeah.
had those opportunities. And then we did follow up as well in 2024 with which is a high dose radiation on a bit of the tumor that they couldn't quite get to in the surgery. And then I'm currently on fortnightly treatment again, but I'm about to have a break from that and do a bit of travel. So it's more of something that is figuring out, how is this sustainable and how can I get some breaks in there and do the things that mean that I'm living well through this.
So there's a couple of things that you've said there again, and for any of the listeners, the first one that you said, I think I thought about it, but when you said it there, I was like, maybe I haven't. First of all, you break it down, because it typically is 3 or 6 month cycles, right? So you have to prepare
Yeah.
yourself for that and go, you know what? I've got this, right? If it's 3 months, great, no worries. 12 weeks, I'm all in on what needs to be done. And I know at the end of that, it's possible that there might be a period of time where I'm doing nothing and I can really enjoy my life. So that kind of begs the second point, which is speak to your oncologist about that as well. I've done that. I've had a conversation and said, well, if we do the 6 months, we've done obviously 3 months so far, that went well. We'll do another 3 months. If that goes well and all the markers are in the right place, what sort of time am I looking at that I might get a break? Because what that does is it allows you to prepare, it allows you to plan, and you can say, right, okay, if I'm going to get 12 weeks off, how are we going to spend that 12 weeks? And like you said, we
Yes.
decided we were going to go traveling as a family. Gives you something to look forward to. You can start planning that. You're not talking about cancer. You're not talking about the chemo. You're going, where are we going? Where are we traveling to? Or whatever that might be. But it
Yeah.
just gives you something else. I think, again, more insights from somebody like yourself that has been through it, and I can see that you're coping with this exceptionally well. I think that's sound advice. Break it up, find out what your time is, and use that to your advantage. Tell me a little bit more though about Nina, about the other stuff that you did, because naturopathy, exercise, nutrition. What I want to do is give the listeners a sense of, because of what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing and all the conversations I've had with you, is you are truly living with cancer and you're doing it exceptionally well. So first of all, tip of the hat to you for that. But what is it that you're doing outside of the chemo, outside of the therapies, that others might not be, that they should integrate into their day to day?
Yeah, 100%. And this again is something that's evolved for me. So when in that first 6 months, I did consult a naturopath, and I had a bucket load of supplements that I was taking. And this was in consultation with my oncologist. I should just say
Yeah.
that, the best way to do this is to have an oncologist who at the very least checks it over and goes, well, it won't do
It
any
won't
harm.
impact. Correct.
They may or may not say, yes, go for it, this is going to be amazing. And I've come to accept that that's not their specialty. Their specialty is not necessarily in these integrative therapies. So they stay in their lane, and then you look elsewhere for people who are specialists in those integrative therapies if that's something that you want to include. But they all need to know, the left hand needs to know what the right hand is doing, so that you can make sure that it is synergistic. It all works well together. But for me, so I threw a bucket load of supplements. I exercised, I did massage, I had acupuncture, I did juicing. I have different people offering, I've heard this would help, I've heard that would help. Honestly, I got myself overwhelmed. I wanted to do all the things because you just want to, as you said before, you used the term, just throw everything at it. And I did. I did all the conventional stuff. I felt like I was doing, all of the other stuff that was helpful. And I'll be honest, it was probably too much. I felt like I'd overwhelmed myself. And in time, I guess I found the things that I found helpful. And I think that's the thing. This is all very individual. So for me, the things that long term, a lot of stuff has dropped away, but the stuff that has remained has been exercise. I cannot stress enough how important it is to get some support, because especially if you perhaps have never exercised before, you're given this life-threatening diagnosis, life-changing diagnosis, and someone says to you, and you should exercise. It's just overwhelming. It's too much. I think when there's a program near you, or maybe someone near you who can support you to find, well, what kind of exercise? What does that look like? Does that mean a walk around the block? Does it mean lifting weights? Does it mean swimming? And there's a lot more information around that now. And I know you're familiar with, we have our spin-off group, our Meaningful Movement, which is a really supportive group, and it's about getting support, knowledge.
Yeah.
And Bowel Cancer Australia has just employed an exercise physiologist, which is just so
Correct.
amazing.
I spoke to her yesterday.
Yeah. Oh, did you?
Yeah,
I'm
I
yet
did. I
to
spoke to her
meet
yesterday.
so
Yeah. She's doing me a program. She's putting. I just said to her, and again, we'll continue this conversation, because you've said about exercise, and what I want to draw out of that is, you're absolutely right, because I've done zero since diagnosis, right? And we had a little bit of a candid conversation before we started this episode, which was, I've put on a little bit of weight, a lot of weight actually. For those that are not watching this on YouTube, you would see the tight t-shirt, but it matters, because not only am I not exercising, which is incorrect, and I need to do more, but I actually don't feel myself. I don't feel as good as I should. And that's where exercise does. It's really important. So again, if you are listening and you're on this journey, reach out to, it's Kayla, I think. Kayla, I think is her name.
Yeah.
I think it is, because I kept calling her Keely. Kayla is her name. Reach out to Bowel Cancer Australia. She's wonderful. She'll put a plan in place for you. She'll tell you
can
what
I
you need
just
to
say,
do. And
all of this stuff,
correct.
It's free, because all of this stuff,
is.
it costs money. And can I just say, don't beat yourself up that you haven't done this or you haven't done that, because it's a slow and steady thing.
Yeah.
You're trying to build in something that hopefully it will be sustainable. And sometimes we do just want to do all the things, and then you balance it out. And I think that's the thing. So I had I've got a very good friend who was a little bit ahead of me when I was first diagnosed, and she said, "Look, if nothing else, go for a walk. If you can just go for a walk up the street or round the block." And I'm so blessed. I've got my sister who I was I was just so grateful because there was a period of time when I could barely get out of bed, and I said to her, "If I get out of bed and shower and dress, I won't have the energy to walk around the block." And she
Mm.
said, "Okay." So she sat me on the edge of the bed. I'm in my pajamas. She put my sneakers on for me. She got my big coat. It was the middle of winter. She got my big coat, and we just put my big coat over my pajamas, and she walked up the street with me. And you know
That is
what?
awesome.
That's just, if you've got someone who you feel comfortable coming into your home when you're feeling a bit rubbish and they're happy to help you do a bit of movement, it does make a difference to your day. It doesn't have to be major. But so that's what I would say exercise has stuck
Yeah.
with me. And I just continue to discover the wonders of exercise on all fronts, symptom management, keeping well enough to say yes to future treatments and surgeries, mental health. And that's the thing. This is a mental game, especially
Correct.
when it's long term. But even if you're physically in remission, the mental game remains. So, it's to me, it's just you get a lot of bang for your buck with exercise. So finding something that you enjoy, finding the way that you like it. Do you like to do it with someone, on your own, in a group? But yeah, all the fact that there are services that are available for free, so important because all of this extra stuff isn't covered by Medicare, but
Correct.
it does
Yeah.
make the difference. I think now they call it, so I've sort of learnt more along the way. I think now they call all of these extra bits supportive care. And that's exactly what it is. It kind of supports you to be able to do your main, perhaps conventional treatments, if that's
Yeah.
the path that you've chosen. So exercise, and the other thing is nutrition. I
Mm.
know when I don't eat well, and eating well after bowel surgery and chemo type treatments looks different for different people. And I think, again, that's where getting some expert help to find out what's going to be right in your new body. Because when you've had things altered, changed, whether it's through, cutting and pasting, chopping things up, or whether it's through systemic, treatment that's upset your gut bacteria, things are different. They're not the
Mm.
same as they used to be. And sometimes it takes a while, a bit of trial and error to figure out what works for you, but
Yeah.
then trying to figure out how you get all the nutrients that you need, protein. I mean, I've learned so much. Again, going back to good old Bowel Cancer Australia, they've got the nutritionist. Again,
Yeah.
free service, and they can help you
Yeah.
work through that. And they'll hang in there with you and contact you regularly until you sort of feel as though you can do it on your own. And then
Yeah.
something might change and you touch base again. So that's been, those two things are the two things I'd say have hung in there the whole way. I do use supplements, but they are really targeted now. So rather than just adding in all the things, because I'm hoping that something might make the difference, it's about finding out who can do an assessment, what am I deficient in, what levels should I be, and being really picky and choosy about what I actually choose to take now, rather than rattling around with a whole heap of tablets in the morning or throughout the day. So I'd say they're probably my biggest things that have stuck
Yeah.
with me. Yeah.
There's a consistent theme here that I'm noticing, and those are the ones that come up. And I don't mind that these episodes might often give the same message, which is exercise, nutrition, and I'm a big believer of the mindset.
Yes.
Making sure that you are in a very positive space. We talked about it before, Nina. Around it's really difficult to say you need to find the joy and the silver
Yeah.
linings in the cancer, right? But if you do that, if you can find the joy, so get your headspace right and know that you're on this journey, but find some joy and some comfort in it and some silver linings, because there are a lot of silver linings and you've talked about them, the journey's going to be so much easier. It's going to be
Oh,
so much easier than kind of just retreating back into yourself and being down about it. And I've seen both of those. I've seen the ones that
yeah.
retreat and I can see they're not handling it very well. And I really want to help those guys. And then I see the
Yeah.
ones like yourself that go, no, I'm on a journey and there are going to be some amazing moments on that journey. and I'm going to cherish those, and I'm going to take advantage of them. You've said a couple of things that I really want to highlight again because they're common themes. First of all, you mentioned that you are the driver of the journey. We mentioned this on
Mm.
the last episode. You are the driver. You need to take control. You said something that was very different. That not said. You'll become the expert. And what I want to bring out in this is that you will, but it won't be overnight because you can get stuck with trying to research everything immediately.
Hmm.
And as you said, you're going to become really overwhelmed because you're doing too much. Every now and again, you need to pause and actually just do nothing because this is a long journey. You're going to learn a
Mm.
lot over that time. So let the education come to you. What you did say that I thought was really interesting was your oncologist is there to support you, but they stay in their lane. So when you talk about supplements, yes, get them involved, but remember, from time to time, if it's not protocol or it's not part of their process, it could get dismissed, which is where you then need to become the driver and the expert. You need to
Mm.
understand why it is you wanted to do that. So you've brought up some amazing points, and I do want to once again, before we move on to the next question, Bowel Cancer Australia, Fiona, Joe, Kayla I spoke to, and the rest of the team, they are amazing. If you are not connected with them, please do. I'm going to leave a link at the end of this podcast,
Yeah.
at the end of this episode, so that you can all get involved. And even if you're a carer, contact them. They are happy to speak to everybody to make
100%. Yeah,
sure
it's not
it's not
just for the
about just the
person.
journey.
Hmm.
Correct.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Let me
Yep.
let me ask you this. Let me ask you this, Nina, because I can see there are challenges during that journey, but the way you articulate yourself, the way you talk, you kind of think you were breezing through this. You're full of so much positivity, and I love that. But what challenges have you faced? Talk to us about some of those. And I don't want to drag you to the moments, but people will go there. Where were some of your down moments, some of your dark moments, and what did you do to sort of get out of those?
Yeah. Do you know what? There's nothing worse than just seeing, I think they've got a term for it now, toxic positivity. There's
Yeah.
nothing worse. It can actually make you feel like you're failing at being positive. And I've had those experiences just in other parts of my life, like, when I first became a mum and I was finding it really hard, and I'd see other mums going, I just love this, I'm thriving. And I'd be thinking, well, I love my baby, but why am I not thriving? And so
Mm,
I'd hate to give the impression that it's all sunshine and roses. I tend to retreat a bit when I'm finding it tough. I just find that I need to step back a little bit. And I've realized over time, I think that's because I kind of, it's my reset. So I sort of
mm,
step back and go, all right, maybe something's not working. What do I need to drop? What do I need to implement? And it takes a little while just to go through that muddy murkiness and then reset and restart. And it might be that down point is because something significant has happened. Maybe I've been given some information that was hard to hear,
yeah.
or it might just be that things are catching up with me. It might just be that you've had time to stop and reflect. It might be that one of your kids has a milestone moment and that just brings up a lot of emotions around, you know, fears. It's fears about, am I going to be here to see those other
Yeah.
milestone moments? It could be all sorts of different things like that and I really feel like you've got to honor that. So you've got to honor those hard feelings as well, because the
Yeah. You do.
reality of all of this is that the joy and the sorrow live side by side. You can't ignore one and just have the other.
Correct.
And you certainly don't want it that way, but you also don't want to stay down there too long. So I've sort of figured out that I need to just step back a little bit, really, really honor those feelings, let them sort of simmer a bit, figure out maybe, then I'm a planner. Then I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, what do I need to do? Do I need to reevaluate what I'm doing over the course of the week or the fortnight? Do I need to get some mental health support? So I've got a mental health care plan through my GP, which gives me a certain number of visits that are
Hmm.
heavily subsidised.
Yeah.
So that's very helpful. But of course, going back to good old BCA, they've got their psychosocial
They've got it there as well.
support, who
Yeah.
at the moment is Hannah. And there are other resources out there that are also free, or for some people, mental health support might be chatting to a trusted friend or family member. So it could mean different things to different people, but sometimes you do need a professional, and sometimes it's good to have someone who you can be completely unfiltered with. You don't have to worry about hurting their feelings. You don't have to worry about upsetting them. You don't have to worry whether they're at the same point in their processing of all of this stuff. Sometimes you might want to say your deepest, darkest fears out loud without upsetting your loved ones.
Yeah.
And so I have found that having a professional who I go, well, I pay them to hear that stuff, or they get, I should say, they get paid, excuse me, to hear that stuff and to help me wade through it. And
Yeah.
sometimes that's what I need to do. Say it out loud. And then maybe there is something tangible I can do, or maybe it is just a bit of time. But the daily things I do, the little daily things that I do is my exercise, as we've talked
Yeah.
about, but then I've got a dog. I love dogs. To me, they're like just the best emotional support. And so sometimes it's just sitting on the couch with my dog, not talking, just being there, and
The
that
little
might do it.
joys.
Being out in that, the little joys, absolutely. Being out in nature, love the beach, love going on walks in nature. We've got a beautiful day here in Adelaide. The sky is blue. I have, for those who've got visuals, I'm not sure if you can see, but I do have a bit of skin reactions to my treatment. So sunlight can be a bit tricky to manage. But as we get into the cooler months and less UV, I'm really looking forward to being outside more in the middle of the day, not
Yeah.
just being a vampire. So there's some of the things I do on a daily basis. But then when things are really rough, I often have to call in help.
Yeah.
And
The,
it's taken
you,
me time to curate that support network.
Yeah, look, the one thing I'll pull out of that immediately is when you hit those moments, you have to pause, reflect, and then respond. And you describe that as, going into planning mode. What do I do now to get myself out of this moment? Because they need to be moments. And I've said this a number of times, moments are okay, but they can't turn into days, weeks, and months because
Yes.
that doesn't help
Yes.
anyone, right? So have your moments,
Yeah.
pause,
Yeah.
reflect, and respond. And you also mentioned there about the mental health plan that you have, and
Mm.
often people will find a stigma about that because they're like, oh, I don't want to tell my doctor, I don't want that. But
Mm.
you're on this journey, and there is no shame. We can go into your doctor and saying, I need a bit of help, and yes, it's heavily subsidized, and I want to make sure that I've got that in place. So if you've not done that and you need it, please do go and have that conversation. Again, the one thing I'll pull out of that is as well, which is like you've said, is have conversations. Say it out verbally and give it to somebody else to hold on to, because
Mm.
they're trained to hold on to it, they're trained to deal with it and help you process it. So let's make sure we do that. Nina, I've got some closing questions, and thank you for a wonderful episode. As we were talking, I was crossing out questions because you were saying some amazing things. I was like, oh, she's covered that one, she's covered that one. But it prompted me to, honestly, it just made, I went, you know what, I don't have enough time with Nina to get all the information that I want out of her, because I think you have got a wonderful balance of handling the negativity that comes with this, but the way you're dealing with it is just inspirational. And so thank you so much for everything you've given us so far. Let me ask, if you could go back to yourself on the day that, go back and talk to yourself on the day that you were diagnosed, what would you say, knowing what you know now?
That's also a great question. And it is really hard to think back because my life looks so different. And I think I'm
Mm,
not a different person, but I've certainly added a few different skills to my repertoire. But really, I think it just sounds so cliche, but that whole one step at a time thing,
mm,
that's the only way that I could really, if you had told me what was ahead of me, that's the only way that I could really cope with it. You will do it, and you'll do it one step at a time. And that could mean a cycle of treatment at a time. It could mean a day at a time. It could mean a moment. You just have to take it one step at a time. And I
yeah,
think the other thing is that in those first few months, and I think this seems fairly common, having spoken to a few people about this, is that I just held my breath. I just thought, just grit your teeth and just get through that first kind of 6 to 12 months of really intense surgeries, treatments, etc. But I've realized now, as time has gone on, to try and just breathe, because you you're in life for the long haul. You don't know what's around the corner. If it's not this, it could be something else. And it's really important to find those bits of joy, those little moments of contentment in every day. And that could be something really small. Like I've got a cup of coffee here that I'm enjoying. It could be something as simple as that. It could be a
Yeah.
chat with a friend. It could be a walk on the beach. It could be chocolate. I mean, chocolate features highly in my day as well. But just finding those bits of joy, because if we're just completely absorbed in the struggles, your life will just sort of slip away, and I have felt when I've had periods like that, I've felt quite regretful, and I've thought, that's not how I want to live.
Yeah.
So acknowledging that there's a bit of both in every single day, and just making sure that you give both enough attention, whatever the attention it deserves, but the joy is
Yeah.
important.
It's
Yeah. And
not
the other
just sound.
thing I think is,
Go on.
the other thing I was going to say is never give up hope.
Yeah.
So, and hope, when I say hope, obviously our first hope is we want this to be cured. We want to cure. We want this to be over. We want life to go back to normal. And for the people that happens for, that is fantastic. And that's what we all hope for. But that's not always a realistic hope. And so hope for me has changed over time. And hope might mean, for me at the moment, having good periods where I'm either on treatment and able to still participate in the things that I want to, or off treatment for a while and off having
Yeah.
adventures or doing what I want to do. And then hope in the future might be, well, if I am well enough for long enough, maybe there will be some treatment which will extend or increase the quality of my
Right.
life. There's a lot of clever people out there, and you just never know what's around the corner.
That's right. The
So
landscape is
never give up
changing.
hope.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So when you, I like, it's not just great advice for yourself going back, but it's great advice for everyone, which is pace yourself. When you get the diagnosis, and for those that get it, for those that have had it, pace yourself. And it's a journey. You're not going to get this figured out in one day. So you got to pace yourself.
Yeah.
And as you said, I think one thing that we've been resonating throughout this podcast is you find the joy in all the little things that just used to be everyday given. Your coffee, your cuddles with your dog, your chocolate. Find the joys in those little things. What's the best advice that I mean, you kind of said it there, but if there's a way of recapping that, what would be the best advice to somebody that is at the very start of their journey?
Yeah, I think we've sort of talked about it throughout our chat today, but it really is that you will become the expert over time in your health journey, and you absolutely have the right and you will have the knowledge to steer your own ship. And I think that's so important, because what's right for you, we could be of similar age, we could have a similar diagnosis, and we could choose a very different path, and both those paths could be perfect for us because we're unique. And so I think it's really important to listen to other people's experiences if that's helpful to you, and then pick out the bits that you want to try. And then it is a trial and error. So curate the life and the journey, for want of a better word, that's right for you.
Yeah.
And you'll do that bit by bit over time.
I did this thing where I sort of went, okay, if it's a long journey, a short journey, whatever that might be, at the end of it, what do I want to look back on? Do I want that journey to be one of, sort of sorrow, sadness, and everybody else is sad and stuff like that? Or if and it's a weird thing to say, but if I've got 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year, 5, whatever that might be, my 1 year is going to be worth everybody else's 3. My 2 years is going to be worth everybody else's 6, right? So I'm like, no, I'm going to make the most of that time. So, but the other thing you said as well is, again, we've said it already, you will become the expert. You'll learn so much, but you won't learn it all in one day. Nina, as we wrap this up, what are your non-negotiables, your daily must-dos? What are your 3 non-negotiables?
Exercise, we've already said.
Yeah.
In whatever form that takes for you, that brings you joy and makes you feel good. Snuggles with my dog and chocolate.
Yeah, lovely.
And
Yeah,
I think we mentioned I am meant to say my family, and of course they're in
yeah,
there,
we should.
but they're the things that are just for me. They're
Yeah.
just my things. Yeah.
Yeah, and that by the way, that is really important. When we talk about the non-negotiable, we talk about the things you want to do daily. Yes, we want to spend time with family. We want to make the most of it. But for everybody again that's listening to this, just for you, do the things that are just for you on a daily
Mhm.
basis. They're so important. Even if that's just meditating, but like you said,
Yes.
sitting on the sofa with a nice bar of chocolate, your favorite one, and having snuggles with a dog. What's the dog called, by the way?
Archie.
Archie. You did say Archie. You know, do the things that are just for you. They're really
Yeah.
important. Nina, I have loved this. And as I said to you, I was crossing out questions going, yeah, she's covered that one. But only as I was crossing them out, it was prompting more questions that I wanted to ask. I don't know if we've got enough time. I think what we'll do is I certainly feel that there's another episode with you because I think you've got so much love, positivity, and there's just so much shine in talking to you. I feel it and I love it and it makes me feel better. So if it's making me feel better, I honestly think it's going to be making a lot of other people feel better as well that are on this journey. Thank you so much. You've been a wonderful guest. I'm really looking forward to getting this one out and sharing it. But I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. I feel so uplifted. And I think when we had our chat before this recording as well, I said the same thing. I mean, I could talk all day and it sounds like you could too. So we just have to
Yeah,
rein it in
I
sometimes.
don't know. Yeah,
But
absolutely.
the feeling is really uplifting.
Yeah, good. I'm really glad you enjoyed it as well. And I look forward to talking to you again. Thank you so much, Nina.
Thank you.
That was awesome. That was really cool.